You know that feeling? When you pick up your phone hoping someone thought of you and it's just a notification and you put it back down. And the afternoon continues, like it always does. If you know that feeling, stay with me for a little while. This one is for you. Linda was 57 years old. She had lived in the same house in Columbus, Ohio for 23 years. A 2-story colonial with a front porch she never sat on anymore, and a kitchen that still smelled faintly of the lavender dish soap her husband Richard used to buy. He passed 2 years ago. A Tuesday morning in February. Quietly, the way he had always done everything. The house still had his reading glasses on the nightstand. She hadn't moved them. Not because she forgot, because moving them felt like the last thing she wasn't ready to do. It was a Thursday afternoon, a little past 3. The kind of afternoon that has no particular color to it, just gray. Overcast sky, no wind, the oak tree in the backyard completely still. The kind of day that makes the whole world feel like it's waiting for something that isn't coming. Linda was sitting in the armchair by the living room window. She wasn't reading. She wasn't watching television. The TV remote was on the coffee table exactly where she'd placed it that morning, untouched. She was just sitting, both hands resting in her lap, a cup of tea on the side table beside her, made 40 minutes ago, gone completely cold now. She hadn't noticed. Outside, a neighbor's car pulled into a driveway across the street. A door opened, then closed. Voices, brief, warm, ordinary. Then silence again. Linda watched the oak tree. She had retired 14 months ago from Jefferson Elementary, where she had been the school nurse for 19 years. Every September for almost 2 decades, she had been the person small children came to when something hurt. A scraped knee, a stomach ache, a quiet cry they couldn't explain to their teacher. She had been good at it. She had been needed. Now her morning started at whatever time she woke up. No bell, no small voices in the hallway, no sense of where to be. She filled the time reasonably well, she told herself. She kept the house clean. She called her daughter Cara in Portland every Sunday. She went to book club on the second Wednesday of every month, where she laughed at the right moments and contributed to the conversation and drove home alone. Some people become so practiced at appearing whole that even they start to believe it. Here's something nobody talks about. There's a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. It's the tired that comes from holding everything together for so long that you can't remember what it felt like to let someone else hold it for a change. Linda knew that tired. She had known it for years. But she had never said it out loud to anyone. Because by the time she realized how heavy it had gotten, she had already convinced everyone around her that she was fine. And starting that conversation now felt like too much to explain. Her phone was on the coffee table. She had been looking at it, off and on, for the past hour. Not consciously, just the way your eyes drift to something out of habit. The way you check a door you already know is locked. Her son David hadn't called in 11 days. She knew he was busy. He had 2 kids under 5 and a job that followed him home every evening. She didn't blame him. She had never once said to either of her children, "I need more from you than this." She wouldn't know how to start that sentence. And then the phone lit up. For one small second, something lifted in her chest. She reached forward and picked it up. Reminder: your prescription for lisinopril is ready for pickup at CVS Pharmacy on Broad Street. She looked at the notification for a moment. Then she set the phone face down on the coffee table. Slowly, without making a sound. There are moments so small they don't have names. A phone picked up, a phone set down. Nobody sees them. Nobody knows they happened. They don't make it into any conversation, any journal, any phone call on Sunday afternoon. They just occur, quietly, privately, in armchairs by windows on gray Thursday afternoons. And then life continues, as if they didn't. Keep listening. Because what happens next is something most people never let themselves do. Linda got up. She carried her cold cup of tea to the kitchen and poured it down the sink. She stood at the counter for a moment, both hands resting on the edge, looking at nothing in particular. The faucet dripped once. She made a mental note to call someone about that. She had been making that note for 3 months. On the refrigerator, held up by a magnet from a family vacation to Gatlinburg in 2009. A photograph. Richard, Linda, David at 19, and Kara at 16. They were all squinting into the sun. Richard had his arm around her shoulder. He was laughing at something just outside the frame. She couldn't remember what it was anymore. She used to be able to remember. She stood there looking at that photograph for a long time, not crying, not smiling, just looking. The way you look at something you are slowly learning to carry differently. Not put down, not forget, just carry differently. There's a kind of grief that doesn't announce itself with tears. It shows up in small, quiet ways, in the way you pause in front of a refrigerator on a Thursday afternoon, in the way you look at a photograph of a man laughing at something you can no longer remember, in the way the house feels like it has a sound even when it's completely silent. Linda understood that kind of grief very well. She just didn't have a name for it yet. She filled the kettle again, set it on the stove, turned the burner on low. The kitchen was quiet except for the small sound of water beginning to heat. That first faint murmur before anything actually boils. She leaned back against the counter and crossed her arms loosely and waited. This was her afternoon. This was Thursday. And there was nothing wrong with it, exactly. Nothing she can point to, nothing broken, nothing missing that she could name out loud to another person without sounding like she was asking for something she wasn't sure she deserved to ask for. That's the thing about this kind of day. It doesn't hurt the way hurt is supposed to hurt. It's quieter than that. It's more like standing in a room where the furniture has been rearranged. Everything is still there. Everything is technically fine. But something feels off in a way you can't quite explain, and eventually you stop trying to explain it. There is something Linda did next that she had not done in a very long time. Something small. Something that cost her nothing. But felt, in that moment, like the bravest thing she had done all week. Stay with her. She's almost there. The kettle began to murmur. Linda took her favorite mug down from the cabinet, white, with a small chip on the handle that had been there for years. She dropped in a tea bag. English breakfast. Richard had always called it serious tea, as opposed to the chamomile she sometimes made at night, which he called giving up tea. She smiled, just lightly, just for a moment. Then the kettle clicked off and she poured the water and the smile faded and the kitchen was quiet again. But this time, she let the smile happen. She didn't push it away. She didn't feel guilty for it. She didn't immediately fill the space it left with something practical or busy or fine. She just let it come. And then, let it go. That was the brave thing. After 2 years of holding grief so carefully, so responsibly, so quietly, she let herself smile at a memory for 3 seconds in her kitchen on a Thursday. And nobody knew, and it was enough. Some people think healing is a big moment, a conversation that changes everything. A morning you wake up and feel different. A day someone finally says the right thing. But sometimes healing is 3 seconds in a kitchen. A smile you didn't push away. A memory you let yourself have. She carried her tea back to the armchair. She sat down. Outside, the oak tree was still. The sky had not changed. The afternoon had not moved in any direction. But something was slightly different now. Not fixed, not better in the way that things in movies get better. With a phone call, a reconciliation, a sudden clarity about what life means. Nothing like that, just less alone. The way a room feels different when someone is sitting quietly in the corner, not speaking, not fixing anything, just present. Before this ends, there is one more thing. Something this story has been quietly carrying from the very beginning. Something Linda doesn't know yet, but you might. Because here's what Linda didn't realize. Sitting in that armchair, on that gray Thursday afternoon, in that quiet house in Columbus, Ohio, she was not alone. Not because someone called, not because someone came to the door, but because somewhere, right now, someone exactly like her is sitting in their own armchair, in their own quiet house, in their own gray afternoon, holding their own cup of tea that has gone a little cold, and they are listening to the story and feeling exactly what she feels. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. Linda held her mug with both hands. The warmth moved through her palms. Outside, a single bird landed on the oak tree branch, sat there for a moment, perfectly still, then lifted off again and disappeared into the gray sky. She watched it go. And then she looked down at her tea and breathed and sat quietly in her chair in her house in Columbus, Ohio on a gray Thursday afternoon. Not fine, not broken, just here. And for right now, so are we.